Is that connected to that?
Okay, it's open, you guys. One away. See, Belmer says
So
room
we are
sitting.
recording.
But does yours have the two little phones on it? I didn't think it usually.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Is it all white? It's not red, right?
Oh, the battery's almost dead. Got no
Shouldn't
juice.
Well, you
That
know what
one's
we can
pretty
do?
low too. That one's fading right.
That's not good.
I don't know if that's why it was red, but before, see how theirs is all white? See
Yeah.
how that one's the green and
Oh,
red?
yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's because if it doesn't have enough juice, I don't know.
Okay. I think we're good now.
Guess we're gonna
We've
try.
got the one. We're gonna go. There we go. Well, we'll give it a try. Okay,
Well,
Karen.
actually, it's
All yours.
sticking out something.
So, thank you for coming. This is our Ed Programs meeting, and we're officially open for business.
All righty.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
So I apologize. I was sick at the last time we were supposed to meet, so we're all better, ready to go. Today, I want to review the RTI numbers from the fall. We'll look again at those RTI numbers coming up in the spring after the winter testing. We're going to review some of the STAR data, the state performance data, and I'll explain that. And then Dana is going to review the pre-K kindergarten Brigance. I apologize, I put kindergarten on there, not pre-K, and same with Haggerty. I'd like to give everybody an update on the Civic Readiness Seal, update on some literacy trainings, and talk a little bit about the ASCD Activate presentation that I did on Friday. So with that, let's go ahead and begin taking a look at our RTI numbers at the elementary level. Go ahead, Karen.
so when I was going through this, I'll tell you what I did. I
Yep.
looked at, the other membership, they're just looking at this for the first time, I think.
Yep.
So I looked at the level ones from this, and I just want to know what determined the level one. That was like the predictor. The report from the STAR that kind of predicted what kids might fall in level one. Is that where the,
Correct. Yep.
okay, so what I did, like for Bellamy, so I went through and put down the numbers from grade 2 that they predicted were level 1 kids. And then I went to our report from last time, and I got the IRL, the instructional and reading level, and I put down the numbers of the kids like in 2nd grade that were PP, and the same thing for 3rd grade, the kids that were PP or P. Okay, and then looking at that, I looked at how many kids are receiving services.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you look at Bellamy, because that came up to me as an area of concern,
Okay.
because when I look at grade 2, there's 38 kids that are level 1 according to this.
Yep.
And then there's 46 kids that are reading at PP. Now, 2nd grade, that would be we're close to reaching grade 3. But there are only 7 kids in tier 2 and 0 in tier 3. That just seems to be a big disconnect to me. And then I just concentrate on grades 2 and 3 because
Okay.
that's where the leap, we talked about this, the leap to
Yep.
with learning to read, learning reading to learn. So grade 3, the level ones were 31, and there was 25 at PP to P. And so when I look at the tier kids receiving RTI or AIS, again, it was 1 to 6. So it
Okay.
just seems like there's a disconnect there. So I don't know what's going on there. If they are getting services or it's just not getting recorded yet. And then I would like, so then if we go to Denti on the next page, there doesn't seem to be a disconnect. Well, not as big a one anyways. So you have in grade 2, there's 38 kids in level 1, 54 reading at PP, pre-primer. And the numbers are, 13 and 38, so it's not as big a disconnect.
Right.
And then for grade 3, it's 34 at level 1, 22 at PP. So it looks like most of those kids are getting some sort of services. So I just went through and I did that for every school.
Can I back up one step?
Yeah.
Karen, because I just want to make sure overall.
I know it's hard because I've seen this and you haven't yet, so.
Well, right, and
Yeah.
so I guess I looked at the first page and I totaled up 1,192 kids.
Right,
And I only had last February's, but I assume it, we average about 400. So last year we had 2,841, all of elementary, K through 6. And so at 1192, that's 42%. So are you telling us that 58% of our kids are tier 1?
Well,
No intervention needed? Because I feel like I feel like that number is not right. I feel like we're more like 50 to 60% in need of services. So the first page throws me.
okay. So several things that you got to keep in mind is technically you're only looking at one piece of data. When I know you're looking at 3 different parts of the star.
oh, no, I
Yeah,
understand. We're
yeah,
looking at
so-
one piece of data, and we haven't
Right.
got to the Brugans yet, because I'm not even talking yet about kindergarten and first grade, because we have the Brugans data.
Yeah,
So that's a different conversation.
But the
Right.
piece that I'm looking at is, we added AIS teachers. One of the reasons we wanted to look at this is what's the ratio of where
Right.
we need. So when you get to the next page of this one, right, the colored one, then you're looking at, are we appropriately allocating people, like the example, we hired 7, you send 1 to every school, but every school is not the same as these pages show. But my other question is, if you have about 1,200 kids, is that enough? Is that not enough? And did we encompass everyone or did not everyone get tested? Because I just,
no, everyone got tested.
okay.
Everyone got tested.
And so do you feel
well-
like about 42% of our kids that's correct? Do you feel that that's accurate, K through 6, that only 42% are tier 2 and above?
You've still got meetings that are going on. There's ongoing meetings. The principals focused first on tier 3 to making sure that those are the most needy kids, got all of the services. They're focusing on tier 2 and they focused on tier 2 also at the same time. But we've got a couple of factors, I think, playing into this too. We're in the middle of COVID. We're not in the middle of a regular school year. We've got people that are going out on COVID. We've got kids that are out on COVID. So getting those meetings organized too at the same time is a little
So the
bit
simple answer is does not mean that all
correct.
all 2,800 elementary kids were tested or
No.
reflected here. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
wanna-
They were all tested. They were all tested, Tanya. They've all been tested on that. I think what you're asking is are we at our maximum number right at this moment with tier 2 and tier 3? Probably
No, my
not.
question is, should I assume that if 42% are encompassed in your first page here, that we can assume that 58% are tier 1? Or not
Correct.
tier?
Well, correct. At this point, yes. Yes, they would be tier 1.
Okay.
You're right. Yep. It would be tier
I'm
1.
hearing things in some of the buildings that literacy, reading, fluency and comprehension is really a struggle right now. So obviously this was also in the fall, but
Correct.
I'm hearing that teachers are struggling to get through, and from parents too. Teachers are struggling to get through lessons because kids are struggling with the basic reading skills. So, and that's to be
Yep.
expected after
Correct.
2 COVID years.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yep.
All right, now to Karen's more
Yes.
detailed. So
No, I understand where we're looking. This is just the star data looked at it in different ways. But
Right.
that's all that I have to look at right now.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's why I'm
Yeah.
going from there. So because when I see Bellamy, where it doesn't look like there seems to be a big disconnect, but Denti, not so much. Gansevoort, grade 3 seems a little off. Then Joyce seems, when you look at the numbers, it seems like they're meet most of the kids' needs. Just wondering whether it's a disconnect, just for those 2 grades, because I just want to, I know how important the literacy
Yep.
is to those grades. and I'm not saying this, I know there's meetings going on, that's just looking at it, are we giving the kids what, that's what my main concern is, are we giving the kids what they need? And then, does Bellamy need more? Do they need, it just, in my head, I know it's just, again, one piece of data, but having no kids in tier 3, when we've got so many kids that are reading at a pre-primer level, and I don't care what data piece, if I do another data piece, it just doesn't sit well with me. It just seems like, you know, do we need to, what's missing? And again, wherever the numbers are, there's a disconnect. It just, what do we need? Is there just, they got to input the data? I don't know.
That definitely could be for second grade right there at Bellamy on the ELA tier 3. I know there's still meetings that are going on. We've got 104 right now that they're still looking at across the district. I've been watching that and monitoring that all the time. I've been hopping into the meetings quite a bit. I've been to, I think, every school at this point into their RTI meetings to not only look at process, but to look at some of the conversations that are going on in there. And I can certainly check on that a little bit further, Karen.
So if a teacher, let's say in second grade at Bellamy, that came up, it's the first one.
Yeah.
If she came to the RTI meeting, what else would she bring besides the STAR data for a second grader?
She could bring F&P data with her. They
Okay.
could bring some anecdotal information, data that they may have done. They could have done a DRA possibly with them in the classroom. They could also bring some data from guided reading of how the child's doing in there with guided reading. So
Is there
there's
any
different.
reports from Phonics and Pinnell that we could see as well? To see a comparison, to see how close the numbers seem to be?
That would be.
What does Phonics and Pinnell give us? Not much? 'Cause
Not
it's just-
much.
It's just,
It's just a reading level.
Just the benchmark test that
Yeah.
we give from Eagle to June.
Yep.
yeah, okay.
So now that I just said you're doing the math of the total number of students, so I see what you're saying. There's only 252 students accounted for at Bellamy, which has, well, no, it's probably comparable to Denty's population, right? They're close in total number right now.
Yep.
But you have 379 kids here for Denty, but we all know Bellamy has a higher need. You know what I mean? It's a more evened out distribution at Denty than it is at Bellamy. So, you know, and that's where you hear the teachers say they're doing more in the classroom, they're doing more tier 2. So I guess that's what I'm wondering is, are we getting, but again, if this is only fall, when is the next one?
They're in it now. It ends
Yeah.
February 11th.
February 11th.
Yeah,
Okay.
We'll have some more
so
information.
then it'll be great to see.
Yep.
But that's,
We're asking the same question, right? It
yeah, you're
seems
just
like-
looking at, I just broke it down, 'cause I wanted to see buildings to see if there was anything stuck out to me as,
Yeah,
you know, 'cause I know we're trying to get the teachers to put the information in tier 2, and that's a new
Right.
switch for them. So is it because it's just not getting done? Where the kids are getting services? I just want to make sure the kids are getting what they need. So, and I don't think that they're not, and I'm not saying that, it's
Yeah.
just, it's not showing up just, you know, just looking at this one. piece. I was
Right,
asking about the Fountains and Pinnell.
Right.
They're great, you know.
So how do they get from, if they're coming to an RTI meeting and they can consider any number of data? Out of that meeting, they're saying this student is a tier 2, tier 3, tier 1, correct? So these are just individual students that have been put in that category, right?
Correct. Yep.
And very often the beginning numbers in the fall are the carryovers from last year. Because they're having their
Correct.
meetings now to determine based upon that initial STAR testing that happened September to end of
Back there
October.
in October, yeah.
And so
Yep.
they started to have those meetings and bring together all those multiple data pieces for this current school year. But the children that come in from, you know, those are your first graders, which last year was a COVID year. So how much RTI did they really get last year to inform the placements for this year?
Right.
And that was where I was gonna go next, because we had the brigade, so I did the same thing for each school. I wrote down, when I looked at the diagram, how many of the kids were below, you know, showed delays. So the 20 data kids would be our first graders, right? The first would be our
Yes,
current
yes.
first graders. So I'll just start with Bellamy. So Bellamy had 71%, the current first graders that were we were showing delays, they were in the, and, well, so,
Which, I'm sorry, Karen, are you on this color?
yeah, so if you go to the
If you go to
Brigance,
the Brigance
because
2020,
that was the only data we had for kindergarten. So September 20, so if you look at
Bellamy,
on
second
Bellamy,
page.
so you have 21% are the below the delays cut off. And I know, if I remember correctly, kindergarten teachers use the Brigance to really inform a lot where they start with the kids, you know. So I guess,
So this is really, so the Brigance is screening school readiness. So
yeah,
it's not the same depth of.
Right.
Of
No, it's not
a knowledge of STAR for F&P, which hopefully our Hegarty assessment for this year will help to piece that data point for your language and your understanding of some of that language with the Brigance together will then help to inform a little bit more towards building that K1 background.
but so 'cause I think it was pretty consistent. I think
Yeah.
everybody threw, there was nothing, no, there was zeros for tier 2 and tier 3 in kindergarten. And I didn't, it just seems like, is that like something the teachers are being told not to put kids in tier 3 in kindergarten, or?
No, you've got some, and we didn't include the speech data in this either, of kids that are receiving speech services. So if you're really looking at the kindergarten curriculum, where you're looking at beginning phonemic awareness and a little bit of phonics at the beginning of the school year, you don't, they haven't even been tested on STAR yet. So you don't really have, and you have children that have never been to school. So to automatically say they need help right away out of the gate, just because they might be struggling just a little bit right out of the gate, that's why we've got that set up in January, February, to start really looking at what progress have they made with the alphabet. And so I think what you're going to see, Karen, is you'll see as we get into January, in fact, in these meetings, the notes they send me, there's kindergarten kids on there for tier 2 and tier 3. So you're just starting to see the kids that are really struggling in kindergarten at this point after we've worked with them for a little while. We're starting to see some of those services being put into place. So you're going to see these numbers increase with kindergarten.
What about the kids that are over in our program over here? Can't we test them and see how they are? And then
They're
use
in
it
here,
for
right?
kindergarten?
They're in
Yeah.
K3.
Yeah.
So then
They're
why
in
are you saying that they're not in there for kindergarten
They're not
already?
on the first.
But why
right?
can't, so then why can't they be?
Yeah, Chris and I
If they're
had,
tested.
we had this conversation,
Yeah.
because I think we're along the same lines. I don't think a kid should wait to get intervention for
No.
tier 2 till January.
No,
You know,
absolutely not.
I think, and I know because we have a COVID, the COVID is put a different factor into the equation.
Yeah.
But I still think there should be kids getting tier 2 intervention. I guarantee if most of our kindergarten teachers are not new, they pretty much know where the kids are. And I think they can tell you, most of them, that this kid's probably going to need intervention. And I don't think we should be waiting. That's
Right.
Yeah,
And then to look at this second one, that is September of 21,
right.
and to look at the kindergarten differences. This is why we're having a restructuring and redistricting conversation, right? Because you can see the disparity building to building. Like, this is the data, right, that we need to look at.
That's not
So
gonna
my
sell-
other
that's not
question,
gonna
and
sell
I
if you can.
apologize, I'm not as well versed in this as Karen and
It's a
Anna
good
are,
grid, though.
is.
No, but
Use
you,
pie
I've
chart.
seen this ahead of time, so I
Okay, so
yeah.
this first page of this one, I'm on the September 21. Says
21
Grove
and
City
20,
School District, all the Brigance.
21 and 20,
Nope, flip 2 more pages.
the 21 one, right? So there are current kindergarten.
They're trying kindergarten and
So
pre-K.
this one shows 600 students,
Mhm.
okay, pre-K and kindergarten. But it says special ed combined.
Correct.
So do we, to a degree, look at our supported learning kids differently because they are naturally getting interventions via their IEPs? Like, is there a way to extract that into another table that might, how much does that skew our,
We have the special ed students separately in here, I believe. We have it in, oh no, not within this one, you don't. Sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, am I asking an appropriate question? Because it's different of you need push in or pull out for a regular ed student.
But the
who falls
Brigance
into
data
this.
only really gives you your ready to learn behaviors. That has, it's not talking about,
You-
reading, it's not talking about math, it's really for children to come in to say, do they understand their right from their left? Do they understand body parts? Do they understand some of the letters of the alphabet? They don't even have to know all of them, because that's not, knowing the letters of the alphabet is the end of kindergarten's standard, not the start of kindergarten.
When
So-
I'm sorry, I don't want to sound silly about that, but when did that change? Like, my kids are all graduated, my last one's graduating. We did this in pre-K. We mentioned this
So
before. We
as
did
we're
handwriting
moving
without
away
tears.
from Common Core and into
NGLS.
and yeah, right, the next generation learning standards, it's pushing back up from the inappropriate push down to the younger grades to being pushing back up to say developmentally, we all learned, I know I learned how to read in first grade, wasn't kindergarten. And so really developmentally, that's when it all kind of clicks together in their minds to that the spoken word, the written word, letters together make words, make sounds, and that they come together to read. So
Okay.
really, the kindergarten year is the exposure of knowing letters, upper and lowercase, putting those sounds together so that they can be prepared to read, which is why at the end of kindergarten, their goal is that A, they know all the letters and they can write them, and then they can be ready to begin learning to read in first grade.
Is the Haggerty going to help us? Because just so I'm not familiar with it, is the Haggerty going to help us to give us a better, maybe a different kind of tool than the Brigance for our pre-K kids, so that when they go into kindergarten, we can get some kids in tier 2 in tier 3 that might need it quicker than we are right now? Will the Haggerty help us with that? Is that a data?
So pre-K is not using Haggerty right now as a full system. We didn't purchase it for them,
Okay.
but they're doing, a lot of that is the rhymes, the finger
Okay.
plays,
All the
the
stuff to get the
playing
kids-
with the language, all of that, ready the phonemes of the
Yeah.
sounds. So that's what they naturally do. I do think it would be helpful for us to have that as a data point for pre-K so that they can show the differences is not everybody goes to pre-K and then transfers into kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then see how
So-
beneficial it is
And
too.
this
Yes,
is the first
right.
year really that kindergarten is even focusing on this.
Okay,
So they were focusing more heavily on the phonics piece, but you can't do the phonics without the phonemic awareness.
right. So that's going to give us a good data point. So we could do it with pre-K, we could purchase it to.
There's a
to-
3-year-old version
Yeah.
and a 4-year-old version.
So we could test all our 4th grade, our
Oh,
4-year-olds.
yep.
Leaving pre-K, so we have, the kids that we have control over.
Correct.
But don't we do the Brigance to all kindergartners coming in?
Yes, within the
Okay,
first
so we
45
could,
days.
so we could do the Haggerty as well, if we had that.
So
Okay.
STAR is, I just want to be correct, STAR is
Sure.
a reading indicator.
Reading and math.
Brigance is a school readiness indicator.
Correct.
And what is the Haggerty?
Phonemic awareness. So the sounds of letters.
Think of it as like the reading prep thing, how ready are kids for?
Yeah,
to
But
learn?
just orally.
oral.
Just orally.
Not
to a
putting,
letter.
not the phonics part yet.
Okay. Okay. Because now I flipped to that page and there's a lot of that.
So Tanya, if you take a look right after the Brigance also, Dana did a really nice chart. If you're not familiar with the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics, of what that is and what's being taught with phonemic awareness and what's being
Okay.
taught under phonics. So just a little, she threw that guide in there just as sort of a, so you can kind of break that down and understand what the differences are between the two, because we're going to be talking quite a bit about phonics and phonemic awareness as we continue to move through the process.
So just as a side note on that Haggerty piece, yes, there's a lot of red, but we would expect that.
Oh, no,
because-
they did, I knew
Yeah.
that, I wasn't worried.
So
at all.
it's interesting because
Yeah.
we're hoping that they're gonna do that second one after STAR. We don't want to do them both at the
Yeah.
same point
Yeah.
right now. So coming closer to that end of the February 11th, we'll have kindergarten retest. And they have been integrating the lessons into their classrooms on a daily basis. So that will be a good indication to see, they're focusing specifically on each one of these data points. every
So
day.
this was given to the kindergartners in September?
September.
Correct.
Is
Okay.
it special ed too for all?
Yes, everybody.
Okay, so to my point to that then, so this should have given them some indication of kids just received tier 2 or tier 3. So there should have been some numbers in
Well,
here.
no,
I'm still trying to understand how.
no,
come
because
there's any
this one is the
numbers.
tier 1 instruction that they then had to do for the part of their daily lessons.
Okay, because it follows along with the
The 10
curric-
minutes,
the
so right
the
here,
curriculum,
this is
right?
10
Right.
minutes
Yeah,
every day.
here.
Yes.
But
So
it
that's
says,
what their main ELA curriculum should have been in the beginning of the year.
right, but it says here, small group tier 2 support. So
That
does that mean they're
was
just gonna give them extra support, but they're not necessarily gonna be tier 2 kids?
for the first grade. So the way it's tiered is that for
Okay.
kindergarten, really this is their initial baseline, and then it's part of their daily instruction
Right,
for
everybody
kindergarten.
gets it.
Everybody gets that tier 1.
Yeah,
Then for first grade, if all the kids for next year, everybody that in kindergarten got the tier 1 instruction of integrity through kindergarten, when they come into first grade, if some of the kids still are scoring without that proficient, when they do their baseline test, that's when that tier 2 would happen,
okay,
and or that tier 3. The tier 3 really is for second grade and above that hasn't broken
the code, okay.
but
Yeah.
what we suggested is some of the second grade classrooms this year, if they felt like their children were really struggling with the phonemic piece of language,
Okay,
for them to do the first grade assessment so that they could put them into a tier 2 or 3 intervention at that second grade level.
okay, all right. Okay,
So for this year, we sort of left, it was new, we left it up to the teachers to really determine on a first and second grade if it's a intervention piece.
yep, I gotcha.
But kindergarten, it's a baseline, tier 1, everybody's getting it for right now, so that we
Okay.
can see how that then builds upon for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it, okay,
And then this obviously for kindergarten first will be another data point for us with the RTI process.
Yeah.
That teachers could bring that
Yeah.
to the table with them, that someone's struggling with it.
And then in terms of RTI, where does our 7-8 fall into this, or our 7-12?
That we're looking, that's your AIS. Academic Intervention Services. Those aren't, we're just focusing right now on elementary at this point. We can do a focus on 7-8 also.
I guess just because, again, as you mentioned, on the heels of COVID, that's where
Yeah.
you're wondering, some of these kids, 2 years of no classroom time, and how much were they getting during that downtime, right? They were obviously not getting the same level of instruction, no matter how amazing our teachers were or how well intentioned. So I guess that would be a little, right, that's where we're hearing struggles right now. We're hearing there's struggles at 9th grade. There's a lot of struggle in 7, 8. The things you're doing at the high school
Yeah.
to level out from 2 meetings ago, I think, where kids are, how many sections of a repeated class we're offering. So, this is great to know where are the new kindergartners and is what, like you're saying, these new things that we're starting and trying to get a whole cohort from kindergarten through is helpful. But we obviously have to balance that with how do we catch up. I hate using that word, but how do we make sure everyone is ready, right? Ready to graduate.
You guys can use my kids. I have a pre-K and the kindergarten. Study them all you want.
Is there any interest, or are you doing anything with, the group from Staley that shifted to the other elementary schools are, the vast majority of them went to Denby and Bellamy, big number of differences. Are you looking at those as cohorts, to see if they're any different, either based on their past performance or based on their counterparts in the new school?
Are you asking, are we pulling out the data separately for Staley?
No, I was just wondering if
students,
you
or-
were, if that was a question in your mind that you were trying to get, and I don't really know what I'm talking about in terms of what would indicate what. I was just curious, since you're looking at those, like this data was in September, right? So that's
Yeah.
when they arrived in these new schools. So if there was any, okay. that's just-
Well, I guess I
Well,
wonder that
you're-
piece too, because part of that determined which of our schools were on the list, right?
Not the Staley move. Because Staley was on the list,
And that's what I'm
Yep.
saying.
right?
So whether or not that bumped a school that might have not have been onto it, 'cause then,
No,
it kind
there's
of like
no-
Staley never existed, basically.
okay.
Right.
You
right.
guys are asking if they track them separate. You're saying if they tracked them
Yeah,
separately.
and to see if there was any noticeable difference based on the transition. That's what I was curious about. That's-
Yeah, it would be kind of, I mean, I guess you could do it.
No,
I think it'd be kind of hard
I
to
don't-
Or it'd be
actually
almost
track
like
that.
why at this point.
Negatively impact
Yeah, if there was anything different, since those were large
You're right.
numbers of students, I mean,
Well-
like about 300 students, I think, out of the 500 wound up at Denty or at Bellamy, and the numbers were really.
Well, their numbers at Bellamy seem low anyway, so it doesn't seem like
Yeah, and
it
then
would be a huge,
I mean, if you had,
I just, I'm.
if you had prior data and then all of a sudden your
Compare it.
statistics look different this year because you added these 200.
well, Bellamy, I mean.
I think
Bellamy's
you're
is-
looking at,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Denty's the other one. I mean, we have the data from last year from Denty. I mean, I wouldn't look at Bellamy's. Bellamy's tends to be pretty consistent and I don't.
Year over year.
Year over year, yeah.
Right,
So I think Denty, if that's the other one that took most of the kids, would be the school to look at, I think.
Well,
we can
so-
pull-
You have it right here on the Brigance, right? So all students kindergarten,
I did look at
all
those numbers. and they
so,
don't look
right,
different.
so, you know, you were at 27% below. Or I'm sorry, 27% within.
are you at 21
one
or
you look at?
22?
Kind of looking at, that's right, these two.
Yeah, I did it on the opposite, so.
You know, and so you had none above gifted anymore with this shift. You went from 27% to 38% within normal, and you went from 71 down to 62 below. Which is kind of interesting because that's not what we hear reflected in the challenges in delivering tier 2 in that building. So it's interesting, you know what I mean? It's interesting versus hearing teachers or parents say, is my child getting enough time, you know, of the intervention, of the help that they need from where they were on their STAR test, or as a teacher, I have an example. I had a friend who was a teacher last year when it was still Staley say, I have 16 out of 20 of my kids in my room who are a tier 2. And this was before we hired more AIS teachers. And she was like, this is a huge strain compared to another building where someone might only have 4 or 5 out of 20 getting tier 2. And that's the disparity we're trying to overcome, right? As we look at decisions for the future. So I guess Paul's question is to the point of, do the transitions have a negative impact or not
Right.
when we're about to make another change? This one was unavoidable,
Right.
but we're about to consider making another change that we hope will level all of these pie charts, right? That's the
Right.
goal. The goal is to level the pie charts for every school.
Yeah, so if you wanted to take to Paul's point, if you look at Denty, okay, because we'll just go on the assumption Bellamy kind of stays the same. If you look at Denty, they were 35% below in 2020, but they're 67% below in 9 this year.
Yes.
So something impacted that change. They took a lot of the Staley kids. Is one possible factor to what Paul's point was, I saying, so.
Where was the board?
Yeah, kindergarten through 3. that's-
No,
No,
I was looking
there
at,
were
I was just
three
looking at the beginning.
It's on
They
this
had
one.
3 sections of kindergarten last year on the 2020. And oh, it just says 72 students. So the 2021 says number of classes. And the 2021 says total number of students.
But it's still 3 classrooms, they only have 3 kindergarten classrooms.
So it's only a kindergarten.
Just one that's kindergarten.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I just.
any other ones would be-
I did like that.
So, and look,
Let's move
same thing
back.
again. So you had 2 kindergarten classes in 2020 and 59% below, 41% normal, none at gifted. And now you're at 76%.
Yeah, so
below.
I won't go them underneath each other so I could see the difference. So Gansworth had, now Joy went from 52 to 60. Ridge went from 30 to 43. So that was, I thought, a pretty big jump for Ridge. And Stokes, it was how, it was,
Okay, but the Ridge part, and again, this is why
No.
I asked that first question, Ridge. The supported learning section, right?
Yes, we added one.
Right. That, and I don't mean that in any negative connotation, but right, like, obviously you have an expectation that those kids need more help. That's what we're there to give them, right? So that's another, none of this happens in a vacuum. There's all sorts of little variables that tip things. But that was that's a whole community that they didn't have before. And Stokes was how much? I'm sorry, I'm trying to flip back.
Yeah, Stokes was 48 and then 46, so hardly any change at all.
And yeah,
Yeah, it was just, I just did trying to see, okay, here's our numbers. Why aren't we not getting kids intervention in kindergarten and first grade? Because those were the numbers, were 0 or small numbers, that's all. But I understand, I might not agree with it still, but yeah.
yeah, and I think that that's so, just so pointed out, the 12-1-1 was in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that that's also the piece of considering is that is those basics. Reading skills is the curriculum for kindergarten.
Yeah.
So at what point do we give them a chance to, I think that is really that January piece is get them into the building sometimes for the very first time, get them acquainted, get them starting to feel as
Yeah.
part of the community, understand what those expectations are,
Yeah.
work on them.
I
But
could,
then,
and I could still argue that we know that those kids are behind for school readiness. So you could still have a tier 2 where you're working on those school readiness skills. So, I mean, you could still make the argument that way. If they're not ready for school, they're not ready for school, but there's a contingent that are ready. So
Sure.
could that be?
well, and that's sort of how they function in their
Yeah.
classrooms anyways, is that they're working
Yeah.
in those
They
smaller
group the
groups
kids,
to
yeah.
to
Yeah.
do that.
So we,
Well, and it sends my brain to like, and again, COVID thwarted this, but what other things, one of our DSEP goals, right, is more parent engagement. So what can we do so that it's not just the hours kids are in school, but how are we helping parents and empowering parents? That's why we're Title I, right? Parent engagement. So how do we empower parents to be reinforcing or repeating or even learning along with their
Well,
kids? these
We're not
skills?
Title I because of parent engagement. We're Title I because of poverty.
We're Title I to provide for parent engagement.
Parent engagement is part of Title I, but that's not the reason why. I
But-
just want to make
but-
sure
But
that,
effective use of that money would do those things, right? It would provide resources to help parents with this process. Like, that's the goal, right? If you have a certain poverty rate, you inherently have families who are not necessarily able to give the kids some of these foundational things. So to bridge that gap and provide empowerment and ways for those parents to do more. That like, it all ties, like, I'm looping it all together, and I've always seen the separate pieces, but until you're well versed enough on it at this level, obviously, again, Karen and Anna have a different advantage because this is what they live daily, like you guys do. But for me, I'm just finally connecting all that dot,
Sure.
I've sat through a Title I presentation every year since 2004.
right,
And now
Well-
only am like, oh, and I know that we did, we always did one school, one book, and I know we've debated the merits of that, but that was an exercise in which parents were doing along with their kids, or even this drop everything and read, or whatever the things. We did the book last year.
Stella.
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 yeah.
Yeah,
We
so,
did purchase for, over the summer for some of the schools that had some extra funds left over, parent engagement for specifically for kindergarten and first, on various ELA and math concepts. So it is an activity kit that goes back and forth
Right.
between home, a book. Also, specifically for Gansevoort, we provided a lot in Spanish to help our,
That's awesome.
population. So
Oh,
that
I
was a
love
big
that.
chunk that
Great.
happened.
so that's a win. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm saying it's an opportunity and a win for us, and it's how we let the community and the public know how the decisions tie together. There's a certain allocation of finance, this component here in ed programs of what the data is telling us and what we think we need to do, and then those SEP and DSEP plans to hopefully have this data look different
right.
going forward. So, yeah, I was not aware of that though, Dana. Thank you for,
Yep.
I did not know that, and it makes sense to a degree. I understand there's a push now for more play-based learning. But to Karen's point, I feel like the sooner you know where a kid's benchmark is, the sooner we know how many resources we need when they get to kindergarten out of the gate, as opposed to waiting until January.
I think definitely specifically in those kindergarten classrooms, if you start from September to after Thanksgiving, there's a huge amount of growth that
Yeah.
happened. I know just going around and visiting the classrooms, you walk in and, it's hurting cats in September. And then
Wild
figure it
ones,
out.
too, feral
Yeah.
ones.
And then you miss their puppies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's hard to figure out.
Noise
And
and
then
stuff.
you walk in and at the end of October, November, even closer to November, to Thanksgiving break, and they got a groove. They're running the
Right.
classroom. They
Mhm.
understand what they're supposed to be doing, their expectations. They can look at a book the right way independently, but it takes so much in that first
Yeah.
month, 2 months of school to set up those systems so that we can sit down and work on those small group or individual skills that kids need.
So now I have to tell you, the one year that the district piloted, I know we had issues with snow days and things, but of having 3 kids who had the same teacher 3 times, I had only 2 trifectas of teachers, pre-K and 5th grade, for all of my kids. The most meaningful parent-teacher conference I had was the one held in January because the teachers were past that.
Yeah.
And even though it was my youngest child and this teacher already knew by association my youngest child, what she was able to tell me about his learning style and how he had already progressed meant so much more to me than it's mid-October and I'm still trying to get this room. So there's some merit to that as well, to that being, because I feel like open house, you get the, here's how my room runs, here's what we expect, here's what we want it to look like. And I feel like sometimes that hinders parents from coming to a parent-teacher conference because they're like, oh, I just went to open house the last week of September. Why the middle of October am I gonna go to a parent-teacher conference? But come January or so, you're like, oh, you really know my child and are really gonna give me some strategies from January to June to help us both, teacher, parent.
I agree with it as a parent, 100%.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in the beginning, everybody's just trying to get into a routine, and
Mhm.
so much nicer when you go in there and the teacher, you already know them, you have a relationship with them, your child loves them by that point, hopefully. And then they can only tell you the good things instead of right in the beginning. It's just a lot.
It's a lot. And it's a lot of them too, because you're like you said, they're still in the herding cats and they're trying to give you something meaningful.
It's a wild time for sure.
It's a wild time.
So quick,
So I'll be curious to see the next set.
yeah.
We have to speed this up, Ms.
I know.
Davis.
So when we look at the
Okay.
Haggerty, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So when we get that, how will they do it like underneath it so we can see the red go down?
I can,
You think
I
so?
just, I kind of cut and pasted the pictures out of the system. I have to pull each classroom up separately
Oh,
and cut and paste and put it on a doc for you guys, but I can do it that way.
okay.
So the Brigance is only done each fall.
Yes,
The Haggerty is done
3 times,
3 times.
yes.
Yep.
So I just was, so there's no way, it doesn't do it by school, it's just by class.
it's by classroom, but I can
Okay.
do it by, it's set up by school now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
but no,
it-
it just
it-
runs
it-
it
a
by
lot
the
of work,
teacher. It's
a
by
lot
the
of work,
teacher because it's the program is the
geared
teachers
towards
and
the teacher, yeah.
And
okay.
Chris Star is how
Yeah.
many times?
3.
Does it- yeah.
But if you want it in different.
It's fall, winter,
I
and
just was thinking,
spring.
just so we can compare.
Same as
No,
the
but,
Brigance?
just so it's.
Yep.
Like, maybe I mean, and you probably won't fit next.
I feel like I knew
It
that,
probably
but-
won't fit next. But
No, that's
I know
okay.
the
You
rest
said
of
three
them.
times, right?
Yeah.
You said 3 times, so you know it was 3
Yeah.
times. Yep. No, that's good. And then we do F and P in the spring.
Oh, and F and P.
Yeah,
So
we
F
do.
and P,
Yeah.
F and P
That's what
works
I
in
think you
tandem
compare
with
with, yeah.
Star.
Yeah.
They
It-
kind of both are assessing reading.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and F and P is it when?
F and P is in the spring through to the summer till the end, to June.
Okay.
We kind of give a wide open period.
I like this, Anna, thank you.
So that one's just from the fall. So just for,
Yeah.
just as a comparison for pre-K, just so you saw where kind of the objectives that they're learning about, but then also the specifics. So this is the fall. We do this 3 times a year also. We have fall, winter, spring for
Bless
Thank
you.
you.
the last 5 years.
Awesome.
But this. will
Let's see the
give
gold
you-
standards.
Yes, the
Yeah.
gold standards.
Yeah.
And so their instruction is driven by this on a daily basis. So this is what they're
Okay.
capturing. Everything is built upon.
Karen, I'll let you go
this
through that one with me
assessment.
offline.
Yeah.
This is what me too. the
Because
gold-
Craig
the
will
gold
get that one and know
standard.
exactly what it is. too.
Yeah, I like
Yep.
it.
If you have
Yeah.
his packet, though, one of us will take
So
it.
Yeah.
just, and I.
There's an
Yeah,
extra.
here's a-
Yep.
okay,
Yeah.
Thank
Um,
you.
So just for, if you have any questions specifically on the pre-K one, then just let me know. We can go over that at a different time. I just wanted, this is the first time I think you've ever seen this.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, that's why I
I've never-
said, yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm
It's
fresh
new.
though, so.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, and
So-
then this one, just, I wanted to give you also is the ASQ
Oh, yeah,
SE,
that
which is the ages and
Yeah.
stages questionnaire. This is the social emotional screener that all of our
Ah.
pre-K kids get at the beginning of the year. We give it in September. And we also
This
give it in
one?
June. Yeah,
Okay,
we give it in, and so it's really screening the students. It's a parent screener first, and so we want to see what the family's perspective is on their child's social emotional health, and it's around their autonomy, their compliance, adaptive functioning, self-regulation, affect, interactions, and social communications. So what happens is we get this data it's part of their registration packet. So once we're enrolling children, we take this data that then determines the social emotional activities that we do, but also our counselor support. And then the teachers, once the teachers get to know the child, they will do an assessment later on to compare between the parent and the
okay, and
teacher's
teacher,
perspective.
okay.
And what we find sometimes
Yeah.
is that the parents just aren't aware of this is the typical behavior of a 2.5-year-old or a 4-year-old.
Right.
And then sit down and have a conversation, say, actually, what you're seeing is normal. And this is how we're supporting it in school. This is what you can do at home. So it's another data point.
That happens when you have multiple kids, and it happens in reverse too.
What's that?
So
Was-
Barb Baca had said to me, she's like, you realize your youngest child is exceptional. I'm like, no, he's just third. He's just keeping up with his brother and sister, right? Like, so it happens both ways. Like,
That's true.
you know, first one you ruin out of everything. Third one you're like,
Really well.
you're supposed to do this now, right?
No, I'm like, here's some food.
Here's some food.
You are busy.
Sorry.
Uh,
And thank you very much for putting this together. It was
Yeah, this
very,
is good
very,
stuff.
very informative.
Put in my
So-
binder.
Especially
Just keep in
I
mind
did
that
my
we have-
binder
You get
last
your binder?
weekend.
All
So,
right.
Marcia, or
We
whatever
changed
we
my
wanna say.
dates.
I see Tanya has
Consider
hers.
what
Nice,
we
your
order.
My binder
Your
is-
binder?
Yeah.
But you know what?
Like it?
Did I miss December 6th or do I have? it
No,
in
you have to
my bag
change
and I
the
just didn't-
dates.
Huh?
We didn't have a December 6th.
Yeah, we
Yes,
didn't have
we
it
did.
December.
We did. We did.
No, we didn't have a January 10th. I just changed that.
We missed one
Yeah.
or we moved
January.
one.
This
January.
one.
Okay,
January.
I
okay.
might have it in here and just didn't get
Yeah.
a punched it in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
We
just
we can get
organized
you
mine.
more tabs if you need them.
Oh, God.
So,
Go to Office Max or whatever it
Go to
is.
We knew this was gonna take a big hunk of it, so.
Yep.
We're really up to Civic Readiness and
Oh, it was
these
the,
two.
it was.
are we
the
good
ELA
with state
stuff.
performance data? Did you-
That was
Yeah.
part of the.
It was part of the whole
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah,
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 okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Okay,
Karen will go through it and you will know.
so
Please,
I just in case you don't know, the state exam 3 and 4 is proficiency on the state exams. I also highlighted a level 2 because that's something, if we're talking about getting off of the list that we're on, we want to make sure we're moving 1s to 2s. We get actually a little bit more leverage that way than we do trying to move 2s to 3s. Not that we don't want to move 2s to 3s, we do want that also. But really focusing on, and the state's even said this to us a couple times, if you can get each class to take a 1 and get 2 kids in that class to move from a 1 to a 2, you're gonna be off the list in no time, as far as what the state is looking for at us. So I did want to sort of point that out for you. It shows you approximately, based on the STAR data, where STAR believes the students would be at on the New York State standards as far as meeting. It's not a guarantee that that's what we're going to get. The other thing too, when you look at this data, it's only aggregated by grade levels. It's not aggregated by the subgroups, and the subgroups are something that could still get you on the list also potentially. So just, as you look at that, just kind of keep that in mind. And the winter screening is probably one of the better indicators of how the kids are going to do on the performance of the 3.8 ELA and the math, if that's still going to be given this year. We still don't know yet. I know they've asked for a waiver, but even if they get the waiver, I'm sure we'll probably still have some kids that will be taking that.
Yeah.
They just may not be required. So update on Civic Readiness Seal. We've been working on this, trying to get this ready. As of today, we have 19 students that are going for the seal or want to go for the Seal of Readiness. Just glancing at the applications they all turned in, I think all 19 can easily get this without a problem. So we're not looking to say, oh, well, this kid's not gonna do it, or any kid that says after we meet with them that, hey, I'm on board, I still want to do this, we're gonna take them, we're gonna mentor them through the process and get them where they need to go. So the next step is Rick Dursey, myself, and oh my gosh, why can't I, Becky Ciotti. I'm sorry, her name slipped my mind for a second. She was just here working with me today. Are planning to, we're planning to meet with the kids, the 19 kids on February 2nd. We want to work through just a couple more things with the rubrics, but most of the kids that have applied have received most of the points they need in the first column, which is the academic column, and they would only need 2 points on the other column. The thing that we really need to work with the kids on is to see what prior experiences they've had with community service, because if they have that and they've got documentation of that and it fits within that scope, we don't want them reinventing the wheel and doing something all over again when they've already done something. So it can be from their past looking at that. So that's going to be part of the conversation on February 2nd. We also want to get kind of a good feeling for if they do have to do some of those projects, what projects are they interested in looking at? We have a voting project right now that the NAACP is looking for some help about just getting out the vote, and it's showing people how to actually vote. So sort of like the public service type thing of, here's a voting booth, this is how you do it, these are your levers, so on and so forth. And so that's a possibility of a project that students could work on with that. We're also working on, we obviously want to get other civic organizations throughout the city up and available to students, so that students have, it's totally self-directed in what they're passionate about civically. So we're going to continue working on that. Guidance counselors, right now, they're just finishing up. I think I just had 2 or 3 more students. Becky went through and did that on the spreadsheet today just to see where kids are at point-wise and how much they might need before we go into that meeting with the kids to talk with them.
So I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Partly as a parent, because my child's one of those 19.
Okay.
I guess because I felt like this is so important, and we're a pilot school in any kid who has the opportunity. So do you feel like we should have had more than 19 kids? I mean, I feel like we have so many.
Yeah, I think it could have gone either way, having no kids or having way too many kids. One of the things that we have to balance right now is, because it's new, we've got to assign them mentors. So we've got to figure out as we move forward with this and as we continue to work on the plan is how many mentors are we going to need? Potentially every kid in the senior class could get this if they wanted to. It might be a little extra work for some kids. But if you really take a look at it, they only count AP courses and advanced courses as a half a point for kids, because they're more interested in getting kids on board that don't have all of those APs and getting them civically involved with it. So mathematically, those kids are still okay, even if they've taken a lot, because that 0.5, say they've taken 5 AP courses, they can count all 5 AP courses toward that 0.5. So you can use it over and over again.
Right. So then I guess my next question to that would be, going forward, you know, obviously in my own child's situation, he's already applied for college. So is the goal that this is something that they would start in 7th or 9th grade, so that they would be able to say by the time they're starting to apply for college, I'm a candidate for the seal of civic readiness?
Correct. So right now, I know Mr. Dursey's working with his 11th grade students, getting them interested in doing this and pursuing it for next year. It is something that we need to work backwards on to at least a minimum 9th grade to get them started on that process.
Okay.
There is a component that we can do at the 7th and 8th grade level, which is a Middlestone capstone project. We're really not quite sure about that. The group is more, there's also a high school capstone project they can do too. Right now, they're really interested in really focusing on just the high school students. And then once we've got that underway, we can rewrite that plan to incorporate the middle school capstone project and get kids started as early as 7th grade. So potentially, I think to your question, Tanya, potentially we could bring it all the way back down through 7th grade, and those things start counting. And kids can start doing community service in 7th grade too.
I just
That
wonder if
would
you
count
didn't get
also.
as many seniors as well, because they're already committed to a lot of things. I mean,
It
not
could
gonna
be.
lie, same thing, you know, my son with the seal of, he could easily do the biliteracy, but he's like, that is one more huge project I have to take on in my senior year. And if I'm not gonna get it until the end of the year with my diploma, like I'm already, applied, accepted,
Mhm.
committed by then. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm wondering how we make sure that it's something that they're working toward. Obviously, volunteerism is my life, so I think it's huge. I love that they're doing this. I just want to make sure I know it's a pilot year, but going forward, how we make it attractive that kids will invest more. So I'm excited about
Yeah,
it.
and that's a part of the plan. That's something they want you to address in the plan too, is how are you going to promote it? What kids are going to be involved with it? So as we finish that up this year, we'll have that part in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep, good question. I did want to give you an update on some literacy trainings that are coming about. Tomorrow, Dana secured for all of our teacher coordinators at the elementary level and every grade level at every building to be represented. We're going to get some professional learning from Renaissance, which is the company that does the star for us. They're coming to do it. We asked specifically for Renaissance to come and do it because they do a really nice job at it. And the theme of it is working smarter and not harder at the tier 2 level. How you can use Freckle and STAR to your advantage so that you're not having to do it. And this is speaking, I think, to your point just a little while ago, Tanya, is how do I service all these tier 2 kids? So Renaissance is really going to show you how you can, from your data, set your goal in Freckle and add on if you want to, Dana, set your goal in Freckle and to map out what the kids need to do to be able to be successful and to move forward in tier 2. Freckle will also give us some growth data on students, both as an individual and also at a school level and at a grade level. We've got some folks in on that, but we want to make sure that everyone's starting to use this at the tier 2 level with our kids. That's for both math and ELA, that Freckle program that we're on. We are looking at a possibility of the MyOn program next year. That's another part of STAR that helps with that reading component. We're still researching that a little bit at this point. And then on February 15th, what we are doing now is anything at the elementary level or secondary level that we're doing with our teachers. We are also having our principals during their elementary principals meeting engage in the same type of workshop, but geared towards leaders so that they understand the instructional practices that need to take place in the classroom. So when they're observing or when they're helping teachers, they know what the teachers are talking about and they have a good general basic knowledge of all of the things that we're using or all the things that teachers are using so they can help promote that with our teachers at their level. So it's not just coming from Dana and I, it's also working with the principals and working with their staffs to give them that autonomy to be able to work with that a little bit. Dana, did you want to say anything else on that?
No, I think just the other piece is that within the STAR CVM platform, it also has some additional data points if they needed to do an on-the-spot assessment to get an extra piece to inform those RTI. So really having the teachers look at their own data, identify where kids are, what they need support, and that they're all going to have something different because not everybody, just because they're in tier 2, it's not everybody getting the same, but you're really able to individualize those supports.
And really, we can leverage this technology to help the tier 2 teachers in the classroom. So again, they're working smarter and not harder, having to do more and more and more. This will help to guide that and facilitate that for teachers. The other thing it's going to do really, as they're looking at that, is as they're starting to set those goals, it's going to make them a better tier 1 reading teacher too, because they're really going to understand where kids are struggling with the things. So it'll translate down to tier 1 practices too. And in the same respect. The other one that I wanted to mention is on the 15th and the 16th. The principals will be on the 15th. And then the reading specialist and the school psychologist will be attending a session of diagnosing and correcting reading difficulties at the tier 3 level for elementary. We're adding the psychologist in there because most psychologists in every building, even Joy, I would say, is involved with it. are involved with really running those RTI meetings and helping teachers to set those goals. So it's important that they also see what those tier 3 reading teachers are doing. Tanya, who's been working with us for quite a few years now, is going to be leading that discussion. We've asked all of the teachers to bring, we asked them to choose 2 students that are working with that they're struggling to actually move them, either out of tier 3 or just move them with whatever goal they have set for them. And what we're going to do is Tanya's going to show them, she's going to have an example of 2 students, showing them the STAR data, showing them the F&P data, and then one other source, I can't remember what the other, Hegarty, thank you. And she's going to help them backward plan to try to get down to the root cause of that example of that student, of what their reading difficulty is, and that root cause helping them to progress forward a little bit more. We are, the goal of this is once they do that, they're going to then get to participate in a group with other colleagues. Their VVS is also joining us as part of that coaster through BOCES. And I believe Camden may be sending some people. I haven't heard back from them yet, but there was some interest there in the work that we're doing here in Rome for correcting diagnosing. The goal is, what I'd like to do is to take our tier 3 teachers to create a PLC on a monthly basis where they can get together and they bring one of their students that they're struggling with moving along. And now we're going to work as a team, just like doctors do their rounds in the hospital. And you say, hey, this patient has this, and this problem. I can't figure out how to get them beyond this point. The other doctors come together, they put their minds together, and then they come up with a solution to the problem. So the goal is that we're getting all of our reading teachers together to really work through kids that are really not making any, are making any growth, to thinking about what else could we do differently for that kid. Or maybe we were off target when we looked at the data and somebody else has a different view of that data. So getting them to talk once a month. We're also looking at expanding it out region-wide and getting other schools involved with it, because we've got more minds out there even that we can tap into, and they can also tap into our specialties here as well. So we're working on that piece right now, but that will be on the 16th over at MV, just to let you know. Last thing is ASCD Activate. I had the opportunity for the second time to present at the ASCD's Leadership Institute conference. They have a conference nationwide every year. Actually, it was, I forget where it was supposed to, I think it was Florida. It was supposed to be somewhere nice. It was supposed to be in January. It got canceled because of COVID. They've got another one coming up in Chicago. They asked me to present there, but I said, I really, at this point, I can't take the 3 days off to go and present for that at this point. We got a lot going on right here. So I declined that, but it was online on Friday, and we hopped in, started talking with other people, basically showed them how we're using Activate in the Rome City School District, and some ways as we start moving out of this COVID era that we also intend to use it. One of the ways that we talked about a great deal was this gives us an opportunity to create a flipped classroom for our teachers. Teachers can watch it at their leisure. And then when we actually come in and do that professional learning work, somebody's not talking at you for 4 hours. That we're actually, hey, that was a work that we were supposed to look at. Now let's do something with that work and let's make a meaningful difference in what we're doing. And that'll also help us, because a lot of times professional development, Karen could probably attest to this, doesn't necessarily stick with teachers, because sometimes it's a one and you're done and you never talk about it again. This will give us an opportunity to kind of flip that story and allow us to really start doing some meaningful work out of our professional learning. So that'll be a one great advantage to it. Aside from that, the resources that our teachers get in there, they get every month, they get the EL magazine. This is usually just administrators who get this magazine. Now, every teacher in our district has a copy of this all the way back to 1943. They can archive it. They also have a copy of all 9 member books that come out. So, because we have an institutional membership, we get those books sent to us, the administration, but now teachers can download those and have those and keep those forever. They can also attend webinars of some of the authors from those ASCD books that they're seeing. They can do it either live and actually get to chat with them, or they can browse them from the archives all the way back to 2010. So it's a valuable resource. The other thing that we can do with that is if we have a teacher that might be struggling in an area on their rubric, we can direct them right to the resource on ASCD so they can read that, or they can view that video on their own time to learn a little bit more, to work with their colleagues on it, and then to be able to demonstrate that proficiency in that particular skill or area of teaching that they might have struggled with during an observation. So that's where we're at right now, and we'll open the floor to any others or questions.
I think we're good.
Is it 5:30?
5:36, but that's all right.
Oh, okay.
We did good.
Any other questions? I know I do have, I noticed on our calendar, we have professional learning next time.
Yeah, and I was gonna wonder if you could add, well, I know usually, you and I usually
Yep.
get together to talk.
Yeah, we can get
but-
together and add.
Yeah. So,
So I've got the professional learning, it's all done. Numbers of basically what we've offered between ASCD Online, the Rome Teacher Center, BOCES, anything we've done in person that we could do in person, and the number of folks that took advantage of those professional learning. So I have all that data ready for you for the next meeting. I know we're now pretty quick next meeting. I think we're in another week or two, right?
7.
7. Okay, so about
And
2
then
weeks.
Karen, that one's the credit recovery.
yes, yeah, and then I was, to your point, I was gonna bring up the RTI and possibly splitting the two, like we had talked about.
Mhm.
RTI, if we have to, rewrite the plan of how we're gonna, so that was on my, that's why I brought my folder, so I wouldn't forget to mention that, so, yeah.
Yep.
So,
What time on the 7th, 4:30 still?
yeah,
Okay.
I think it might already be on there, Anna. Do you have the-
No, I have a massage, so I think I've pushed it out.
Oh, be naked on the-
From 3 till 4:15, so I'll come over here fresh.
Oh, be naked.
Oh, boy, we're gonna turn this off
I'll
now.
do minutes.
Hold on. Let me stop this.
I said 4:30, okay.
Doesn't like it.
No,